But number two, you need to keep an eye on the cleanup. You're here all the time. You live here. You can drive by and see that things are going well. There's a very simple measure that from the road you can tell if things look right or not. Because two people who were down here with me from my office said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, the first thing you look at, what does the place look like? Is it orderly? Are things in place? Does it look like it is kept neat, clean, in order? Or are there things strewn about? Are there people lolling around having a sandwich over out in the work site where there are contaminated sediments? Do you have hoses that are laying around spewing water? Is there a pile of dirt that looks like it's out of place? Or some sort of liquid that's lying on the ground that isn't rainwater? You know, if things look out of place and they look sloppy, you need to call somebody. If they look neat and orderly, if the piles of dirt are covered the way they're supposed to be, if there's a guard there, if the fences are closed after hours, if things are parked where they're supposed to be rather than blocking roads. If it doesn't look right, call somebody. Call EPA, they've got a hotline. Call the NEuse Riverkeeper, that's even better. She's local, she'll make some trouble. She'll do some further investigation.
Yes, sir.
The problem that I have is that there's fish contamination that comes down fairly far from the ward transformer site. Now, over the years, you'd expect it to come down. The fish tissue contamination goes further down than the cleanup. Are the fish contaminated because there's contamination still in Briar Creek and Crabtree? Are those bodies of water more contaminated than we expect? That's possible. Are there other sources of PCBs? That's possible. Is there something going on that we don't know about? Well, this being a Superfund site, I would put my money on all three of them. Fund sites weren't created intentionally. Somebody didn't go out and intentionally plan things. There are accidents, there's sloppiness, there's carelessness. That's how they came to be Superfund sites. Superfund sites are places where you can expect and should find new things. They will be filled with surprises. You won't find an orderly sequence of events in a Superfund site. You're going to get to a certain point and suddenly things aren't what they should be. Right now we start off with things aren't fully explained. We cannot explain, EPA has not explained, the contractors have not explained how the incredibly low level of PCB contamination in either the lake or the reservoir can account for the levels of PCBs in the fish. So either there are more PCBs in the lake and the reservoir than are accounted for, which I think has got a good probability, or there are more PCBs coming in from somewhere else. Next. I don't remember. This slide shows you not only where we are, but also the things that are going on. Where there's excavation going on, it's going to occur in the upper reaches of the creek. Next. And all the way up here. And then down here at the lower reach, we're going to have monitored natural recovery. And all the way down here in lower Crabtree Creek. Next. So what are the messages that I'm going to leave you with? Well, they're about PCBs. They are dangerous. They are worrisome. EPA is certainly correct in taking this site seriously and recognizing that this site needs to be cleaned up. There is no question about it, just as other sites all over the place. And it's because PCBs are not only toxic, but because they accumulate and they will persist, and they will be with us for a long time. Now, the good news is our efforts at cleaning up such contamination pay off. The more we clean up, the lower our overall body burden is of contaminating chemicals. And you can measure that, you can go find that out for yourself. The Centers for Disease Control has a website that shows you their most recent data of contaminant levels in the US population. And fortunately, the overall trend is downward for the average person in the US. But I contend that the people who are out there catching and eating fish are probably not the average. In most rivers, there are people who are out there catching and eating fish to put food on the table. I'm going to guess that number is going to increase if it hasn't already started to increase. In tough economic times, we see an increase in the number of people who are either subsistence fishing or fishing because they're adding an important protein component to their diet. We've seen that in other places. We should expect it here. We've seen it in the James River, and I know that we've seen that on the West Coast in several places where I still work. We need to deal with this question about natural recovery. If it's going to work, I want to see the data. So I expect to see them, and I'm going to be asking EPA for the data. EPA said that there would be more sampling in the reservoir and the lake, and I want to see those data as well. The thing that bothers me, as I said, is the fact that there are contaminated fish without an obvious explanation. So either that contamination from the Ward transformer site became further distributed and was more widespread and more serious than just up at the head of the creek and in a small area from the Ward transformer down to the head of the creek, or there's more PCBs somewhere else. And the evidence is this last part. It's not that just we have laboratory evidence. It's not just that we're going out of the book, out and getting it out of the books. The information we have is from the site itself. We have real data collected on animals taken from that site that provides us solid evidence the waters are still toxic to the animals that live there. I have to thank a number of people for this presentation, not only Alyssa and the Riverkeeper, but also the people who I've worked with over the years on a number of PCB contaminated sites. And I thank one of the other Riverkeeper associations, the one to which I referred, who said, Peter, can you give us PCBs 101 without the eye-glazing lecture? And that would be Tim Gray of the Housatonic River. The Housatonic River is in New England. It's approximately parallel to the Hudson River. So GE did to the Housatonic what they did to the Hudson that you saw in the video earlier. I want to thank you. This is your water bottle. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.